I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I laughed when the process server handed me those papers. Not because anything was funny, but because I was sitting in a wheelchair, unable to walk more than 10 feet without collapsing from pain. My ex-husband Jackson was suing me for stalking him across Ontario. The irony. For the past 4 months, I'd been flat on my back in a hospital bed recovering from a car accident that nearly killed me. My name is Aria Thompson. I'm 60 years old, and until that lawsuit landed in my lap, I thought the worst chapter of my life was already written. The divorce from Jackson had been brutal. 28 years of marriage gone. Not because of infidelity or abuse, but because of money. Or the lack of it. His construction company, Barrett Construction, had been our golden ticket. We'd lived comfortably in Oakville, sent our daughter Emily to good schools, taken vacations to Florida every winter. Then the economy crashed. His biggest client declared bankruptcy, owing us $840,000. The domino effect destroyed everything. Within 18 months, we lost the business, the house, and somewhere along the way, we lost each other. Jackson blamed himself. I blamed the circumstances. But instead of pulling together, we pulled apart. The divorce was finalized 3 years ago in 2021. We split what little was left: my teacher's pension, his salvaged equipment, some savings that barely covered our legal fees. We'd been civil. Distant, but civil. Until now. I stared at the papers in my shaking hands. The header read, "Notice of Legal Action, Harassment and Stalking." The allegations were specific. Damning. March through June 2024, 18 documented incidents of me allegedly following Jackson across Ontario. Ottawa, Kingston, Mississauga. Even Muskoka, where I'd apparently shown up outside some cottage. The dates were there in black and white. March 15th, April 3rd, May 22nd, June 10th. Every single date I'd been in St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, unable to move without assistance. My hands trembled as I read further. Jackson was demanding $250,000 in damages for emotional distress and fear for personal safety. He wanted a permanent restraining order. He wanted me out of his life forever. But here's what made it so absurd: I couldn't have stalked anyone even if I'd wanted to. On February 12th, 2024, I'd been driving home from a parent-teacher conference on Highway 401 when a transport truck jackknifed in front of me. My Toyota Camry was crushed like a tin can. I'd broken my right leg in 3 places, shattered my pelvis, spent 4 days in ICU fighting off infection, 3 surgeries, 117 days in the hospital. Dr. Patel, my orthopedic surgeon, had been very clear. "Mrs. Thompson, you won't walk unassisted for at least 6 months. The damage to your pelvis alone requires complete immobility during healing." The lawsuit had been filed in week 17 of my recovery. I looked down at my legs. The right one was still in a burst, angry scars visible through the gaps. The wheelchair had become my constant companion since my discharge 2 weeks ago. My apartment in downtown Toronto was small, a 1-bedroom I could barely afford on my early retirement pension. But it was mine. Safe, quiet, until today. My daughter Emily burst through the door an hour later. She'd driven straight from her marketing job the moment I called. "Mom?" She dropped her purse and knelt beside my wheelchair. Her eyes scanned the papers I'd spread across the coffee table. "What the hell is this?" "Your father is suing me." Emily's face went pale. At 26, she looked so much like me at that age: auburn hair, green eyes, that stubborn set to her jaw when she was angry. "For what stalking, Mom? You've been in the hospital." "Apparently I've been very busy." I tried to keep my voice light, but it cracked. "According to these papers, I've been following him all over Ontario, calling him repeatedly, sending threatening letters." Emily grabbed the papers and started reading. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to fury in the span of 30 seconds. "This is insane. Dad knows you were in the hospital. I called him when you had the accident. He sent flowers. Yellow roses," I murmured, remembering, with a card that said, "Get well soon." "So how can he possibly think—" Emily stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes narrowed. "Unless he doesn't actually think it's you." I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Mom, Dad's not stupid. He knows you were laid up. So either someone convinced him it was you," she trailed off, her face darkening, "or someone wants him to think it's you." The thought hadn't occurred to me. I'd been so shocked, so hurt by the accusation that I hadn't stopped to consider the possibility. Who would want to frame me, and why Emily pulled out her phone and started scrolling. When did Dad start dating again? Do you know? I shook my head. We don't exactly keep in touch about our personal lives. Right, but Emily's fingers flew across her screen. I know he mentioned someone. Back in January, maybe, he was all happy about meeting a wonderful woman who understands him. My stomach twisted. Not from jealousy, Jackson and I were long past that, but from unease. Do you know her name? Linda something. Linda Bennett, I think. Emily held up her phone, showing me a Facebook profile. This is her. She's been dating Dad since February. I stared at the profile picture. A blonde woman in her mid-50s, professionally dressed, smiling at the camera. She looked normal. Pleasant, even. February, I repeated slowly. Right when I had my accident. Emily's eyes met mine, and I could see she was thinking the same thing I was. The timing was too perfect. I spent that evening going through the lawsuit page by page, forcing myself to read every word, despite the nausea building in my stomach. Jackson's lawyer had been thorough. Too thorough. The evidence packet was thick. 52 pages of documentation that painted me as an obsessed, dangerous ex-wife who couldn't let go. Exhibit of 15 photographs. I spread them out on my coffee table, my hands shaking. Each photo showed a woman who looked disturbingly like me. Same height, about 5'6". Same build, though I'd lost weight during my hospital stay. Same short auburn hair, though styled slightly different. Same style of glasses, those Ray-Ban frames I'd worn for years. In one photo taken outside a Starbucks in Ottawa, the woman was even wearing a navy windbreaker, identical to one hanging in my closet. Oh my God, Emily breathed, leaning over my shoulder. Mom, she looks exactly like you. Not exactly, I said, picking up the photo and holding it closer. Look at the posture, the way she's standing. The woman in the photo had her shoulders hunched forward, head tilted down. I'd spent months in physical therapy learning to stand straight to protect my spine and pelvis. This woman's posture was all wrong. But from a distance, in the moment, I could see how Jackson would be fooled. The call logs were printed out in neat columns, dates times durations, all from my cell phone number 416-550147. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my call history, my heart pounding. March 5th, 11:47 p.m. According to the log, I'd called Jackson and left a voicemail saying, "You can't just move on, Jackson. I'm still your wife." Except I wasn't. We'd been divorced for 3 years. And according to my actual phone records, I'd been asleep at 11:47 p.m., doped up on morphine after my second surgery. March 18th, 1:23 a.m. Another call, another voicemail. Linda won't last. She doesn't know you like I do. I'd never even met Linda. The calls continued through April and May. Late-night calls, early morning calls. All allegedly from my number. All impossible. Someone spoofed your number, Emily said immediately. It's not that hard. There are apps that let you fake caller ID. I looked at her. How do you know that? I work in marketing, Mom. We deal with phone scams all the time. People fake numbers to make calls appear legitimate. She grabbed the papers. These calls didn't actually come from your phone. Someone made it look like they did. A small spark of hope ignited in my chest. So we can prove it. Absolutely. We just need to get your actual phone records from Bell Canada. They'll show what towers your phone pinged from what numbers you really called. If you were in the hospital in Toronto and these calls came from Ottawa, that's proof of fraud. These disturbed me most of all. I pulled them from the manila envelope, my stomach churning. Each letter was written on plain white paper mailed in standard envelopes with Toronto postmarks. The handwriting was eerily similar to mine. That same slight slant to the right. The same way I crossed my T's and looped my Y's. But the content. Dear Jackson, you think you can replace me with that blonde bimbo, you're making a mistake. I'm warning you now, send her away or you'll regret it. I'm watching. Always watching. Another one dated May 2nd. Jackson, I saw you with her at Tim Hortons on Bank Street. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? I know where you go. I know where she lives. This isn't over. It will never be over. Aria, my vision blurred. Someone had studied my handwriting well enough to copy it. Had taken the time to write these sick letters and mail them. Why Emily had gone pale. Mom, whoever did this is seriously disturbed. This isn't just a prank. This is calculated. I know. We need to call the police. And tell them what, I gestured at the papers, that someone is impersonating me. They'll just say it's part of the civil lawsuit. We need a lawyer first. Someone who can help us figure out what's really going on. Emily was already typing on her phone. I'm calling Sarah Mitchell. She's a criminal defense lawyer, one of the best in Toronto. She represented a colleague's sister last year in a fraud case. Emily, I can't afford... Mom, she looked up, her eyes fierce. You're not going through this alone. I have savings. We'll figure it out. The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. Thank you, baby. She squeezed my hand. What would you do if someone was trying to destroy your daughter? You'd fight like hell. Well, that's what I'm doing for you. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photographs. That woman who looked so much like me, standing in the background of Jackson's life like a ghost. Who was she? And more importantly, who hired her? Sarah Mitchell's office was in a glass tower overlooking Lake Ontario. The view alone probably cost more than my monthly rent, but Emily had insisted Sarah was worth it. She doesn't lose, Emily had said on the drive over. And she doesn't back down. I needed someone who wouldn't back down. Sarah was younger than I expected, early 40s, with sharp blue eyes and an even sharper suit. She shook my hand firmly before gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. Mrs. Thompson, Emily gave me a brief overview on the phone. But I want to hear it from you. Start from the beginning. So I told her about the divorce, the accident, the lawsuit, the evidence that painted me as a stalker when I'd been lying helpless in a hospital bed. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and studied me. You know what strikes me most about this case? What is the level of sophistication? She tapped her pen against the notepad. Whoever did this didn't just snap a few photos and call it a day. They studied you, your handwriting, your voice, your clothes, your mannerisms. This took planning, resources, time. But why? The question I'd been asking myself for days. Why go to all this trouble? That's what we need to find out. Sarah pulled out the photographs and spread them across her desk. May I? I nodded. She studied each photo carefully, occasionally pulling out a magnifying glass to examine details. These weren't taken by an amateur, she said finally. Look at the composition, the lighting, the angles. Whoever took these knew what they were doing. This is professional surveillance photography. My blood ran cold. You're saying someone hired a private investigator to follow Jackson and stage these photos? I'm saying someone hired a professional photographer to document a woman who looks like you appearing near Jackson. Whether that woman knew she was being photographed is another question. Emily leaned forward. You think the woman in the photos is in on it? Possibly. Or she could be an unwitting accomplice someone hired for what they thought was a legitimate job. Sarah pulled up one of the photos on her computer and zoomed in. See here. In this reflection, I squinted at the screen. In the glass window behind the woman there was a faint reflection of someone holding a camera with a telephoto lens. That's not a smartphone photo, Sarah said. That's professional equipment. Expensive equipment. So we're looking for someone with money, I said slowly. And motivation. Who benefits from Jackson believing you're stalking him? The question hung in the air. I thought about Linda Bennett, the new girlfriend, the one who'd appeared in Jackson's life right around the time of my accident. His girlfriend, I said. Linda, but why would she want Jackson to think I'm stalking him? Sarah made a note. Let's find out more about Linda Bennett. Emily, you said Jackson's been dating her since February. That's when he told me about her. They might have been seeing each other before that. And what do we know about her? Not much. She's 55, says she's a healthcare consultant, lives in Ottawa. Emily pulled up Linda's Facebook profile on her phone. Her social media presence is pretty minimal. This profile was only created in December 2023. Sarah's eyebrows rose. Show me. She studied Linda's profile, scrolling through the handful of posts. Her expression grew more skeptical with each swipe. This is a thin digital footprint for someone her age. Most people in their 50s have years of online history. Photos from college, old jobs, friends commenting on posts from years ago. She looked up. Linda Bennett's online presence begins 6 months ago. That's a red flag. You think she's using a fake identity? I asked. I think Linda Bennett might not be who she says she is, or at minimum she's hiding something. Sarah closed the laptop. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to gather your medical records from St. Michael's Hospital, every single page. Nursing logs, doctor's notes, visitor records, security footage. Everything that proves you were physically incapable of being in Ottawa or Kingston or anywhere else during those dates. I can get those, I said. Good. Second, we're going to get your phone records from Bell Canada. Not just your call history, but the cell tower data. That will show exactly where your phone was during each of these alleged calls. Emily mentioned that. Something about pinging towers. Exactly. Every cell phone constantly communicates with nearby towers. If these calls supposedly came from your phone in Ottawa, but your phone was actually pinging Toronto towers, that's proof of spoofing. Sarah made more notes. Third, we're going to hire a private investigator, someone who can dig into Linda Bennett's background, find out who she really is and what she wants. How much is this going to cost? The question I'd been dreading. Sarah named a figure that made my stomach drop. $45,000 for her retainer alone. The private investigator would be extra. I started to shake my head. I don't have that kind of money. I'm living on my teacher's pension, and Mom, Emily put her hand on my arm. I have savings, and you're going to pay me back when this is over. Emily, I can't, Mo. Yes, you can. Because if we don't fight this, Dad will win by default. You'll have a judgment against you for $250,000. They could garnish your pension, take your apartment. You have to fight. I looked at my daughter, my brave, fierce daughter, and felt tears prickling my eyes. Okay, I whispered. Okay. Sarah stood and extended her hand. Mrs. Thompson, I want to be very clear about something. Whoever did this to you, whether it's Linda Bennett or someone else, they went to extraordinary lengths to destroy your reputation and frame you for a crime you didn't commit. That tells me they have something significant to gain or hide. And you think we can prove it. I think the truth has a weight that lies can't match. It might take time, but we'll find it. Her grip was firm, confident. And when we do, the person responsible is going to face serious criminal charges. Identity theft, fraud, harassment, possibly more. For the first time since receiving that lawsuit, I felt a flicker of hope. 3 days later, I sat in the records department at St. Michael's Hospital, waiting for them to compile my file. The woman behind the counter name tag reading Brenda had looked at me sympathetically when I'd explained what I needed. Honey, you want everything from February through June. That's going to be a lot of pages. I need everything, I'd insisted. Every single notation. Now I understood what she meant. The file they handed me was 3 inches thick. 389 pages documenting every minute of my 4-month nightmare. I spread them out on the coffee table back at my apartment, Emily beside me with her laptop open, ready to organize everything. Admission record, February 12th, 2024, 3:45 p.m. Patient arrived via EMS following multi-vehicle collision on Highway 401, presenting with compound fracture, right femur pelvic fracture, multiple contusions. Patient conscious but in severe pain. Admitted to emergency department. Orthopedic surgeon Dr. Rajesh Patel notified. I remembered that day in fragments. The screech of tires, the impact, the paramedics cutting me out of my crumpled Toyota, the ceiling lights of the ambulance, Emily's terrified face when she'd arrived at the hospital. Surgical report, February 12th, 2024, 7:20 p.m. Patient underwent emergency repair of compound femur fracture. Procedure lasted 6 hours. Hardware placed titanium rod 4 screws. Pelvic stabilization attempted, but will require secondary surgery once swelling decreases. Patient transferred to ICU for monitoring. 6 hours of surgery. 6 hours I don't remember lost to anesthesia and trauma. The next page showed ICU records. Every 2 hours, a nurse had checked my vitals, recorded my pain levels, adjusted my medication. February 13th, 2:00 a.m. Patient resting. Pain level 810. Morphine administered. Vitals stable. February 13th, 6:00 a.m. Patient awake, disoriented. Daughter present. Pain level 910. Increased morphine dosage per Dr. Patel. I flipped through page after page. The records were meticulous. Every medication, every vital sign, every visitor, every time I used the bathroom, every meal I managed to eat, every physical therapy session. On March 15th, one of the dates I was allegedly in Ottawa, stalking Jackson, the nursing notes showed March 15th, 10:00 a.m. Patient unable to stand unassisted. PT session attempted. Patient managed 8 steps with walker before severe pain. Session discontinued. Patient returned to bed. March 15th, 0 p.m. Daughter Emily Thompson visited 1:30 to 4:00 p.m. Patient in good spirits despite pain. March 15th, 6:00 p.m. Dinner chicken broth jello. Patient consumed 40%. Pain level 710. I couldn't have been in Ottawa. I'd barely been able to get out of bed. Emily had started creating a spreadsheet. Mom, this is perfect. For every date in that lawsuit, we have hour-by-hour documentation of where you were and what you were doing. She pulled up the lawsuit papers and cross-referenced them with my medical records. March 15th, alleged sighting in Ottawa at 11:00 a.m. My records showed I was in physical therapy, unable to walk more than 8 steps. April 3rd, alleged sighting in Kingston at 2:30 p.m. My records showed I was in my hospital room receiving a visit from my brother Thomas. May 22nd, alleged sighting in Mississauga at 6:00 p.m. My records showed I was being transferred between wards, accompanied by 2 nurses. The pattern continued. Every single date, my hospital records provided an ironclad alibi. We need the security footage too, Emily said. If the hospital has cameras in the hallways, that's even more proof. I nodded and reached for my phone to call Brenda in records. Mrs. Thompson, Brenda said when she answered. Did you get everything you needed? Yes, thank you, but I have one more request. Does the hospital keep security camera footage? We do, but only for 90 days. After that, it's deleted unless there's an incident report. My heart sank. So anything from February or March is gone. I'm afraid so, but April, May, and June should still be available. You'll need to file a formal request with our security department, and there's a fee. How much? $200 for footage compilation. Money I didn't really have, but money I couldn't afford not to spend. I'll be there tomorrow to file the request. That evening, Emily helped me draft a letter to Dr. Patel asking him to provide a written statement about my condition and mobility limitations during my hospital stay. He responded within hours. To whom it may concern, I am writing regarding my patient Aria Thompson, who was under my care from February 12, 2024 through June 8, 2024, following a severe motor vehicle accident. Mrs. Thompson sustained catastrophic injuries, including a compound fracture of the right femur and a pelvic fracture requiring surgical intervention. Her recovery was complicated by post-surgical infection, necessitating extended ICU stay and multiple follow-up procedures. During the period from February 12 through May 15, 2024, Mrs. Thompson was physically incapable of independent ambulation. She required assistance for all activities of daily living and was confined to a hospital bed or wheelchair. Any suggestion that she could have traveled to other cities during this time is medically impossible. Her mobility restrictions continued beyond her June 8th discharge, with use of a wheelchair required for an additional 8 weeks. Should you require further documentation, please contact my office. Sincerely, Dr. Rajesh Patel, MD, FRCSC, Orthopedic Surgery, St. Michael's Hospital. I read the letter 3 times, relief flooding through me. Medically impossible. Those 2 words would save me. Getting my phone records from Bell Canada took another 3 days and $65 in administrative fees. When the email finally arrived, I printed all 68 pages and spread them across my kitchen table. Emily came over straight from work, armed with coffee and highlighters. Okay, she said, pulling up the lawsuit papers on her laptop. According to Jackson's lawyer, you called his number, that's 613-555-0892, 23 times between March and June. I ran my finger down the call logs. Here are my actual calls during March. The list was short. March 3 to 15 p.m. Called Emily, 12 minutes. March 5, 10, 23 a.m. Called Emily, 8 minutes. March 8th, 4:30 p.m. Called Hospital Pharmacy, 6 minutes. March 12th, 9:15 a.m. Called Insurance Company, 22 minutes. March 18th, 11:00 a.m. Called Emily, 15 minutes. March 22, 3:45 p.m. Called Sarah Mitchell's office, 11 minutes. March 28th, 2:30 p.m. Called Emily, 9 minutes. No calls to Jackson. Not a single one. What about the calls he claims you made? Emily asked. The ones at weird hours? I checked the logs for the dates and times listed in the lawsuit. March 15th, 11:47 p.m. According to the lawsuit, I'd called Jackson and left a threatening voicemail. According to my actual phone records, No outgoing calls after 6:30 p.m. that day. April 3rd, 23 a.m. Another alleged call to Jackson. My records phone was completely inactive from 10:15 p.m. the previous night until 7:30 a.m. the next morning. May 22nd, 3:12 a.m., yet another alleged late-night call. My records, no calls made or received between 9:00 p.m. and 8:00 a.m. They're all fake, Emily breathed. Every single one. We need the cell tower data, I said, remembering Sarah's explanation. That will show where my phone actually was during these times. Emily called Bell Canada's legal department and explained what we needed. After being transferred 3 times, she finally reached someone who could help. Yes, we can provide cell tower location data, but you'll need a subpoena or a court order, the representative said. We have an active lawsuit where this data is crucial evidence, Emily explained. Can we get it through our lawyer? Absolutely. Have your attorney file a formal request with case number and we'll release the data within 5 business days. Emily hung up and immediately called Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, we've got the phone records. Mom didn't make any of those calls. We need you to file for the cell tower data to prove the calls came from somewhere else. I could hear Sarah's response even without speakerphone. I'll file the motion this afternoon. This is exactly the kind of evidence we need. While Emily handled the legal logistics, I found myself staring at the lawsuit papers again, specifically at the voicemail transcripts Jackson's lawyer had included. Someone had listened to these messages and transcribed them word for word. Jackson, it's me. You can't just erase 28 years of marriage by replacing me with her. I see you together. I see how she touches your arm, how she makes you laugh. But she doesn't know you. Not like I do. This won't end well for either of you. The words made my skin crawl. Not just because they were threatening, but because they captured something true about my relationship with Jackson. We had been married for 28 years. I did know him in ways no one else could. Whoever wrote this knew details about our marriage. Personal details. Mom, Emily's voice pulled me back. You okay? You look pale. Someone knew things, I said slowly. About Jackson and me, about our marriage. These voicemails reference specific details, how long we were married, how we understood each other. That's not public information. Emily frowned. You think Linda got Jackson to tell her things about your marriage? Or she researched us? Divorce records are public. Maybe she found details there. I paused. Or maybe she talked to people who knew us. That's seriously creepy, Mom. It's more than creepy. It's calculated. I looked at my daughter. Emily, whoever is doing this, studied me. They learned my handwriting, my voice, my habits. They found someone who looks like me and dressed her in my clothes. This isn't random harassment. This is a targeted campaign. Emily's face had gone pale. But why? What do they want? That was the question that kept me awake at night. What did they want? Sarah called 3 days later with news. I've hired an investigator, she said. Her name is Diane Kovac, former RCMP, 22 years of experience in fraud investigation. She's going to dig into Linda Bennett's background. How much will that cost? $8,000 for 5 days of intensive investigation. I know it's expensive, but Aria, I think Linda is the key to all of this. I closed my eyes. Between Sarah's retainer, the hospital records, the phone records, and now a private investigator, I'd already spent more than I had. But Emily had insisted on covering the costs, and I'd reluctantly agreed. When does she start? She already has. I sent her everything we have on Linda Facebook profile, what Jackson told Emily, the timeline of when they met. She's building a background file as we speak. 2 days later, Diane Kovac came to my apartment. She was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and an air of competence that reminded me of my former principal. She shook my hand firmly before settling into the chair across from my wheelchair. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be direct. Linda Bennett is not who she says she is. My heart stuttered. What do you mean? Diane pulled out a folder. Linda Bennett claims to be a healthcare consultant, but there's no record of her ever working in healthcare in any official capacity. No nursing license, no medical credentials, nothing. But she told Jackson, people lie. Diane's voice was matter of fact. What's interesting is what I found instead. She laid out several printed documents. Linda Bennett, or rather a woman using that name, worked as a psychiatric nurse at Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre from 2012 to 2019. So she does have healthcare experience. Had. She was terminated in 2019 for ethical violations. The word hung in the air like a threat. What kind of violations? Emily asked. Diane pulled out another document. According to my source at the hospital, someone who worked with her, Linda had inappropriate relationships with patients. She would manipulate them, make them dependent on her. There was one case where she convinced a patient that his family was trying to harm him, so he'd only trust Linda. My stomach turned. That's psychological abuse. It's called gaslighting, and Linda was apparently very good at it. The hospital fired her when they discovered she'd continued contact with a discharged patient, violating hospital policy and professional ethics. Did they press charges? Emily asked. No. The patient refused to cooperate, and the hospital wanted to avoid publicity. They just let her go with a notation in her file that she should never work in healthcare again. I thought about Jackson, my ex-husband who'd been so vulnerable after our divorce, who'd lost his business, his home, his confidence, who'd been lonely and looking for connection, the perfect target for someone like Linda. There's more, Diane said. I ran Linda Bennett through court records in British Columbia, found a civil case from 2016. She laid out a court document. I scanned the summary. Bennett vs. Price Estate. Plaintiff Linda Bennett née Morgan sued for breach of contract. Defendant estate claimed fraud and emotional manipulation. Case settled out of court for $90,000. What does this mean? I asked. It means Linda, using her maiden name Morgan, was sued by a man's family for allegedly manipulating him into giving her money. The man, Gerald Price, was 67, widowed. Linda convinced him she was his true soulmate and that his deceased wife would have wanted them to be together. He transferred $180,000 to Linda before his daughter discovered what was happening. Emily made a small sound of horror. They settled? I asked. Linda returned $90,000. The family decided it wasn't worth the cost of a prolonged legal battle, but the pattern is clear. Diane leaned forward. Linda Bennett targets vulnerable men. She gains their trust, isolates them from family and friends, and manipulates them for financial gain. And now she's dating Jackson, I said slowly, a man who's still recovering from bankruptcy and divorce. A man worth approximately $3.2 million, Diane added. I looked into Barrett Construction. Your ex-husband rebuilt after the bankruptcy. The company is thriving again. He owns property in Ottawa, has substantial investments, and a life insurance policy worth $800,000. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You think Linda is after Jackson's money? Emily said. I think Linda is using a very specific playbook, Diane corrected. First, she isolates the target from anyone who might interfere, in this case you, Mrs. Thompson. She's made Jackson believe you're stalking him, that you're dangerous. That creates dependency. Jackson now sees Linda as his protector. But the lawsuit, I said, that's taking it pretty far. Is it a restraining order would legally prevent you from contacting Jackson? If he updated his will or life insurance, you wouldn't be able to challenge it. You'd be shut out completely. My blood ran cold. You think she's planning to... I think we need to consider the possibility that Linda's endgame involves more than just taking Jackson's money while he's alive. Diane's expression was grim. Gerald Price was lucky. His daughter intervened before anything worse happened. But Linda's pattern is escalating. She's more sophisticated now, more careful. Emily had gone pale. Are you saying you think Linda might try to kill my father? I'm saying we need to take this very seriously. And we need to figure out who the woman in those photographs is, because she's the linchpin of Linda's plan. Diane pulled out the 15 surveillance photos. I've analyzed these extensively. The woman is a professional. Look at how she positions herself, always at an angle, never fully face on, always maintaining the right distance. This isn't amateur stalking. This is someone who knows how to be seen without being clearly identified. So she's working with Linda, I said. Almost certainly. And I have an idea about how to find her. Diane smiled grimly. Linda made one mistake. She needed someone who looked like you, same height, same build, same coloring. That's a very specific requirement. And in January, someone posted a very specific casting call on Craigslist. She showed us a screenshot printed from an internet archive. Casting call, female actress needed. Age 55-65, height 5.6, short auburn hair. Independent film project, discreet work. $25,000 flat fee. Contact Phantom. prod2024 at protonmail.com. The ad had been posted on December 28, 2023, 6 weeks before my accident, 3 weeks before Linda officially met Jackson. "She planned this," I whispered. "All of it, from the very beginning." "The question is," Diane said, "who answered this ad, and can we get them to talk?" Emily was already typing on her laptop. "I can search for actresses in the Toronto-Ottawa region who fit that description. There can't be that many." "Good," Diane said, "because we need to find this woman before the court date. She's the only one besides Linda who knows the truth." The next morning, Diane came back with a file that made my blood run cold. She sat across from me, spreading documents on my coffee table like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. "I found 2 more victims," she said without preamble. 2 men who fell into Linda Bennett's trap before your ex-husband." Emily moved closer, her hand finding mine. "Tell us everything." Diane laid out the first set of documents. Gerald Price was 67 when he met Linda at a grief support group. His wife had died 6 months earlier, lung cancer. He was devastated, lonely, vulnerable. I knew that kind of grief. I'd seen it in friends who'd lost spouses. That hollow look, that desperate need for connection. Linda introduced herself as a grief counselor. She wasn't. She was just another member of the group, but she presented herself as someone with professional training. Diane pulled out photographs. Within 2 months, they were dating. Within 4 months, Gerald had transferred $180,000 to her account. "For what?" Emily asked. "That's the genius of Linda's manipulation. She never asked for the money directly. Instead, she created scenarios where Gerald felt compelled to give it. First, she mentioned her daughter, who doesn't exist, needed cancer treatment. Gerald, thinking of his late wife's struggle, immediately offered to help. 20,000. My stomach churned. Then, Diane continued, she told Gerald that his late wife had appeared to her in a dream, saying she wanted Gerald to be happy with Linda, that his wife's spirit was giving them her blessing. Gerald was so desperate to believe his wife would approve that he accepted it. "That's sick," Emily whispered. "It gets worse. Linda convinced Gerald that his daughter, his real daughter Sarah, was only interested in his money, that Sarah hadn't truly loved her mother, that Sarah was trying to control him. Gerald started pulling away from his daughter, giving more and more money to Linda. By the time Sarah figured out what was happening, Gerald had given Linda $180,000. I thought about Jackson, about how Linda had convinced him I was stalking him, the same pattern, isolate the target from family. Sarah Price hired a lawyer, Diane said. They sued Linda for fraud, but Gerald initially refused to testify against Linda. He believed she loved him. It wasn't until Sarah showed him bank records proof that Linda had been simultaneously dating 2 other men that he finally understood he'd been played. Did they get the money back? Half. Linda settled for $90,000, no admission of guilt. She moved to Ottawa and disappeared for a while. Diane pulled out another file. Until 2018. Patricia Dunn was 55. Her husband had died in a construction accident. She was drowning in grief and medical bills. That's when Linda found her. The pattern was becoming clear. Linda hunted grieving, vulnerable people. This time Linda posed as a healthcare advocate, told Patricia she could help navigate the insurance claims, the legal paperwork. Patricia was overwhelmed and grateful for the help. Diane showed me a photo of Patricia, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes. She reminded me of myself. Linda became Patricia's confidant, her closest friend. Then slowly she started introducing fear. She told Patricia that her husband's death might not have been an accident, that there were rumors about faulty equipment, about the construction company cutting corners. She suggested Patricia might be in danger from people who didn't want her asking questions. "Oh my God," I breathed. She created a threat that didn't exist. Exactly. And then Linda offered to help Patricia go into hiding until things were safe. She convinced Patricia to liquidate assets, close accounts, transfer everything to a secure location, which was, of course, Linda's account. "How much?" Emily asked. $65,000. Everything Patricia had left. When Patricia finally realized what had happened, she was too ashamed to report it. She'd trusted Linda completely. The betrayal nearly destroyed her. Diane handed me a document. "I spoke with Patricia yesterday. She's willing to testify if this goes to trial. She wants to stop Linda from doing this to anyone else." I looked at Patricia's phone number written in Diane's neat handwriting. Another woman whose life Linda had demolished. 3 victims we know about, I said slowly. How many more are there? That's what worries me, Diane said. These are just the ones I found in a few days of searching. Linda's been operating for at least 8 years. There could be a dozen more victims who never reported her. Emily had been taking notes. Okay, so Linda targets vulnerable people, usually men who've lost spouses or gone through divorces. She gains their trust by presenting herself as a helper or caregiver. Then she creates an external threat, a greedy family member, dangerous people, an obsessed ex, and positions herself as the protector. The victim becomes dependent on her, isolated from everyone else. And then she takes their money. That's the pattern, Diane confirmed. With Gerald, she isolated him from his daughter. With Patricia, she isolated her from her friends and lawyer. With Jackson, she's isolating him from me, I finished, making him think I'm dangerous, that he needs her protection. But there's one big difference this time, Diane said, her expression darkening. Gerald and Patricia both survived with their lives intact, if not their bank accounts. With Jackson, the stakes are higher. What do you mean? Diane pulled out another document. I did some digging into Jackson's finances. He's worth $3.2 million real estate investments, the construction company. But here's the critical detail. His life insurance policy is worth $800,000, and according to public records, you're still listed as the backup beneficiary. My head spun. What? No. We've been divorced for 3 years. The primary beneficiary is his daughter, Emily. But if something happened to both Emily and Jackson, or if Emily was unable to inherit the money, would go to you as the backup. It's a standard setup that people often forget to update after divorce. Emily's face had gone pale. You think Linda knows this? I think Linda researched everything about Jackson before she ever approached him. And I think her plan isn't just to take his money while he's alive. Diane met my eyes. I think she's planning to kill him. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my wheelchair. That's insane. She couldn't possibly. Mrs. Thompson, look at the pattern. Linda's schemes are getting more ambitious, more dangerous. She went from manipulation to creating elaborate false identities, from stealing money to framing you for stalking. This isn't someone who's going to stop. This is someone who's escalating. Emily's voice was shaking. We have to warn Dad. We have to tell him. He won't believe us, I said quietly. The truth hurt, but I knew it was true. Linda's spent months convincing him I'm obsessed with him. If we show up now with accusations about her, he'll think we're trying to destroy his relationship. It'll just drive him further into her arms. So what do we do? Emily demanded. Let him stay with a woman who might kill him. We prove it, Diane said. We find concrete evidence that Linda is behind the stalking scheme. We find the woman in the photographs. We get them both on record, and then we go to the police with everything, not just the fraud against you, Mrs. Thompson, but a credible threat against Jackson's life. 2 days later, Diane called with news. I have found her, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. The woman in the photographs. Her name is Karen Westbrook. Emily put the phone on speaker so we could both hear. Who is she? Karen Westbrook, 58 years old, former actress. Had minor roles in TV shows and commercials in the 90s and early 2000s. Nothing major, background work mostly. A few speaking lines here and there. Her career never took off. Diane sent over a file. I opened it on Emily's laptop. Karen Westbrook's headshot stared back at me. The resemblance to me wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. Same height, same build. Her hair was different in the photo, longer, darker, but that could be changed. Where is she now? Emily asked. Ottawa. She moved there in January 2024 from Vancouver. The timing made my skin crawl. January. Right when Linda would have needed someone for her plan. There's more, Diane said. Karen filed for bankruptcy in 2020. She was $150,000 in debt. Credit cards, medical bills, back rent. She lost her apartment in Vancouver and was couch surfing for a year. So she was desperate for money, I said. Desperate enough to take a job that paid $25,000, no questions asked. I found her response to the Craigslist ad in an email dump from a data breach last year. She actually responded through email, she did. And she was smart enough to use a burner email account, but not smart enough to hide her digital fingerprint completely. I traced the IP address. It's her. Emily leaned forward. So we know Karen is the woman in the photos. We know Linda hired her. Can we prove it? I'm working on that. I've been conducting surveillance on Karen for the past 2 days. She's living in a small apartment in Centertown, Ottawa. Keeps to herself mostly. But yesterday she went to a Tim Hortons on Bank Street. My heart started pounding. And Linda Bennett met her there. Diane sent over a photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. 2 women sitting at a table. One blonde Linda, one with short auburn hair, Karen. I got close enough to record some of their conversation, Diane said. Not everything, but enough. Linda was telling Karen to lay low and that she'd get the rest of her payment once the lawsuit was settled. Can we use that recording? Emily asked. It's admissible in court under certain circumstances, but more importantly, it proves a connection between Linda and Karen. It proves this was a conspiracy. I stared at Karen's photo. This woman had put on a wig, worn clothes like mine, and followed my ex-husband around for months, all for money. What else do we know about her? I asked. Diane's voice grew more serious. Karen has a history. Not criminal exactly, but questionable. In 2015, she was involved in a scam in Vancouver. She wasn't charged, but she was implicated. Essentially, she was hired by a man to pretend to be his ex-girlfriend at public events to make his new girlfriend jealous. She's a professional impersonator, Emily said. More like she's desperate enough to take on roles that other actresses wouldn't touch. She's been on the edge of the industry for years, taking whatever work she can get. Posing as someone else for money isn't new to her. Can we talk to her? I asked. If she knows Linda is dangerous, if she understands she's part of something criminal. That's exactly what I was thinking, Diane said. Karen Westbrook is a pawn, not a mastermind. She took what she thought was an acting job, but I doubt Linda told her the full extent of the plan. If we can show Karen that she's in serious legal danger, accessory to fraud conspiracy, possibly even accessory to attempted murder, she might flip. You want to offer her immunity, Emily said, in exchange for testimony against Linda. Yes, but we need to move carefully. If Linda finds out we've contacted Karen, she'll either pay Karen off to disappear or eliminate her as a witness. The word eliminate hung in the air like a threat. When do we approach her? I asked. Soon. I'm still gathering evidence bank records showing money transfers from Linda to Karen, more surveillance footage documentation of Karen buying items that match your wardrobe. Once we have an airtight case, we approach Karen with an offer she can't refuse, cooperate and get a plea deal, or go down with Linda for conspiracy to commit fraud. And murder, I added quietly. If Linda is planning to kill Jackson. We don't have proof of that yet, but the storage unit gives me hope that we will. I blinked. Storage unit, ma'am. I followed Linda after her meeting with Karen, Diane explained. She didn't go home. She drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of Ottawa, Maplewood Storage off Highway 417. What did she do there? She went to Unit 237, stayed for about 15 minutes, then left carrying a small duffel bag. Emily was typing furiously. Can we get access to that unit? Not legally, not without a warrant, but... Diane paused. There are ways to gather information without technically breaking the law. Like what? I asked. The storage facility has security cameras. I befriended the security guard older gentleman named Frank Worksnights. For $200, he let me review footage from the past 3 months. Guess what I saw? My pulse quickened. What Linda Bennett has been visiting Unit 237 twice a week since February. Always alone. Always carrying bags in or out. On one visit, she brought a large box. On another, she brought a garment bag. Evidence, Emily breathed. She's storing evidence there. That's what I think. But without access to the unit, we can't prove it. Diane's voice took on a different tone. However, Frank mentioned something interesting. The storage facility requires 2 forms of identification to rent a unit. Linda used a driver's license and a credit card, both in the name Linda Marshall. Not Linda Bennett? Nope, Linda Marshall, which means she's using an alias, and that gives us leverage. Emily pulled up a search engine. Linda Marshall, Ontario. Oh my God. She turned the laptop so I could see. A news article from 2018. Healthcare worker fired for ethical violations. The article was brief but damning. A psychiatric nurse named Linda Marshall had been terminated from Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre for inappropriate conduct with patients, including manipulation and boundary violations. That's her, I said. That has to be her. Diane's voice was grim. Linda Bennett is her married name or another alias. Linda Marshall is probably her real name, and she has a documented history of manipulation. Can we use this? Emily asked. Absolutely. It establishes a pattern of behavior. It shows Linda has experience isolating vulnerable people and making them dependent on her. A judge would find this very relevant. But I was thinking about the storage unit, about what might be inside. Diane, we need to know what's in that unit. I know. I'm working on it. Frank has access, but asking him to actually open the unit crosses a line. He could lose his job, but I have another idea. What security cameras capture everything, including when renters access their units? The facility requires a personal code to open each unit, but the cameras show what people carry in and out. I can review more footage, see what Linda's been storing there over the past few months. Build a circumstantial case. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. 24 hours later, Diane called back. You need to see this. She came to my apartment with her laptop pulling up security footage from the storage facility. This is from January 15th, she said, pressing play. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. The camera angle showed Unit 237. Linda appeared on screen unlocking the unit and carrying in a large box. Watch what happens next. Linda entered the unit. The door stayed partially open. For 15 minutes, she moved in and out of frame carrying things. Then she emerged with a bundle under her arm. Diane zoomed in on the image, enhancing it. Look at what she's carrying. It was a wig, auburn hair, short style, my style. She's storing the costume there, Emily said. Everything Karen used to impersonate Mom. Not just that, Diane pulled up another clip. This is from February 3rd. The footage showed Linda entering the unit with a professional-looking camera case. Photography equipment, I said. High-end stuff. Probably worth $5,000 at least. Linda hired a photographer, I haven't identified him yet, to take those surveillance photos. She's keeping the equipment in the storage unit, so it's not connected to her directly. Diane showed us clip after clip. Linda bringing in manila folders, a laptop case, shopping bags from costume stores. This is her evidence locker, Diane said. Everything she's used to frame you, she's storing there. She probably thinks it's safe. After all, it's under an alias at a facility where she pays cash. So how do we get inside? Emily asked. We don't. Not yet. But I've documented 37 separate visits Linda's made to this unit since January. That's enough to establish a pattern. And more importantly, I've identified times when the storage facility was nearly empty. Times when Frank could theoretically accidentally leave Unit 237 unlocked for 5 minutes. I stared at her. You want to break in? I want to observe, Diane corrected. Anything I found wouldn't be admissible in court, but if I happened to photograph the contents from the doorway, and if those photographs led us to other legally obtained evidence, it was a gray area, ethically questionable, possibly illegal. But I thought about Linda's 3 previous victims, about Jackson walking around with a target on his back, about Emily who might lose her father if we didn't act. Do it, I said. 3 days later, Diane showed up at midnight with a folder full of photographs. I got in, she said simply. Frank forgot to lock Unit 237 for exactly 7 minutes, long enough. Her hands were shaking slightly as she spread the photos on my coffee table. Emily had come over to wait with me, neither of us able to sleep. What we saw made my blood run cold. A handwritten document on legal pad paper. The heading read, Project Phantom Wife. Diane had photographed it clearly enough to read. Agreement between Linda M. and KW. KW agrees to. Assume appearance of Aria Thompson photos provided. Follow Jackson Barrett to specified locations. 18 total. Allow surveillance photography. No direct contact with target fee, $25,000. $15K paid 120, $24,010K on completion date, 6/15/24. Both parties agree to confidentiality. The date was January 15th, 2024. Signed with initials LM and KWA, box containing auburn wig, short style identical to my haircut. Ray-Ban eyeglasses, model RB5154, my exact frames. Navy windbreaker size, medium my size. Skechers walking shoes size 7.5, my shoe size. Khaki pants. Gap brand, I owned the same pair. She matched everything. Emily whispered. Every detail. A folder containing over 50 photographs of me. Photos from my Facebook. Photos Emily had posted on Instagram. Photos from my daughter's graduation, from family events, from casual outings. Someone had been collecting images of me for months. There were notes in the margins. Height 5'6", hair auburn brown natural, glasses Ray-Ban RB5144, posture slight forward lean back problems, gait favors left leg. They'd studied me like a specimen. A USB drive labeled ARIA Voice Samples.mp3. I can't prove what's on this without accessing it, Diane said, but I'm willing to bet it's recordings of your voice that Linda collected, probably from videos Emily posted online. Emily gasped. Oh God, I have videos on TikTok where Mom's talking in the background, from Christmas, from her birthday party last year. Linda used those to train Karen, Diane said, to teach her how to mimic your voice for the fake voicemails. A notebook opened to a page with Linda's handwriting. The header read Timeline. Phase 1 John Feb preparation. Find actress done. KWU. Collect photos, voice samples done. Train actress on mannerisms in progress. Establish relationship with target done. JB. Very receptive. Phase 2. Marmay execution. Stage 18 sightings list attached. Professional photography. 5K. Paid. Spoofed calls using spoof card app. Handwritten letters. KW practices penmanship. Phase 3 Junjul legal action. JB files lawsuit against AT. AT panics may settle out of court. Or AT. Found guilty equals restraining order equals perfect. Phase 4 Augoct endgame. JB updates will remove AT as beneficiary. JB makes LM primary beneficiary. Full access to assets 3.2M. Redacted. Total investment 35K. Expected return 4M plus. The word redacted had been scribbled out heavily with black marker. What does redacted mean? Emily asked. Why did she ross it out? Diane pulled out another photograph. Because of this. She'd used UV light on the page, revealing the original text beneath the scribble. Stage construction accident. JB dies. Inheritance 800K life insurance plus 3.2 in M estate. Eliminate AT as suspect via restraining order. The room went silent. Linda wasn't just planning to steal from Jackson. She was planning to murder him. Emily's face had lost all color. We have to go to the police. Right now. Tonight. With what? Diane asked gently. Evidence I obtained illegally. Photos I took without a warrant. This storage unit information won't hold up in court. Linda's lawyer would get it all thrown out. But my dad's life is why we need to do this right, Diane interrupted. If we go to the police with inadmissible evidence, Linda will know we're on to her. She'll destroy everything in that storage unit. She'll pay off Karen to disappear, and we'll have nothing. So what do we do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Diane met my eyes. We flip Karen Westbrook. We show her this notebook. We show her that Linda is planning murder. Karen signed up for an acting job and some easy money. She didn't sign up to be an accessory to homicide. You think she'll talk? I think when Karen realizes she's facing 20 years in prison as an accomplice to conspiracy to commit murder, she'll sing like a bird. The next morning, Diane laid out the plan. We approach Karen alone without warning, show her the evidence, offer her a deal full cooperation in exchange for immunity or a reduced charge. Will the prosecutor agree to that? Emily asked. Sarah's already made contact with the Crown Attorney's office, Diane said. They're very interested in Linda Bennett. Once they hear about the murder plot, they'll want Karen's testimony. But first we had another problem. We need to protect Jackson without alerting Linda, I said. If she thinks we're closing in, she might accelerate her timeline. Sarah Mitchell had joined us via video call. Her face on Emily's laptop screen was grave. I've already contacted Jackson's lawyer, Judith Brennan. We need to warn her that her client might be in danger. Will she believe us? I asked. Judith's been practicing law for 30 years. She's seen manipulation before. Once I show her Linda's history, Gerald Price, Patricia Dunn, she'll take it seriously. Sarah pulled up a document on screen. I'm also filing a motion to dismiss the lawsuit against you, Aria. Based on the evidence we've gathered, your medical records, the cell tower data showing the calls came from Ottawa while your phone was in Toronto, the proof of number spoofing, we have grounds for immediate dismissal and countercharges of fraud. When? Emily asked. I'm filing this afternoon. The hearing will be in 2 weeks, but I'm also requesting an emergency protective order for Jackson Barrett based on credible threats to his safety. Linda will find out, I said. Yes, which is why we need to move on Karen Westbrook today, before Linda has time to react. Diane nodded. I'll approach Karen this afternoon. I've been watching her routine. She goes to a coffee shop on Somerset Street every day at 2 p.m. I'll intercept her there. I want to come, I said. Everyone looked at me. Mrs. Thompson, that's not a good idea, Diane started. She impersonated me. She wore my clothes, studied my voice, followed my ex-husband around while pretending to be me. I deserved to look her in the eye. Emily squeezed my hand. Mom, I'm coming, I said firmly. I'll stay in the car if you want, but I'm coming. At 1:45 p.m., we sat in Diane's car across from Java Hut Coffee Shop on Somerset Street. Karen Westbrook arrived exactly on time. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair now dyed auburn, my color, and cut short. Seeing her walk by felt like looking at a distorted mirror. Same height, same build. If I squinted, I could almost believe it was me. She looks tired, Emily observed, and scared. Good, Diane said. That makes our job easier. We waited until Karen ordered her coffee and sat down at a corner table. Then Diane and I went in. I used my cane now instead of the wheelchair, though my leg still ached. But I wanted to walk into this confrontation under my own power. Karen looked up as we approached. Her eyes went wide. Karen Westbrook, Diane said, sliding into the seat across from her. Who are you? My name is Diane Kovac. I'm a private investigator. And this is Aria Thompson. Karen's coffee cup slipped from her hand, splashing across the table. She grabbed napkins, her hands shaking. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I sat down slowly, pain shooting through my hip. You've been impersonating me for the past 4 months, wearing my clothes, following my ex-husband. Let me see you even learn to copy my handwriting. Karen's face had gone white. It was just a job. An acting role. An acting role? Diane repeated. Is that what Linda told you? At Linda's name, Karen flinched. I'm going to show you something, Diane said, pulling out her phone. And then you're going to make a choice. She showed Karen the photographs from the storage unit, the contract, the costume pieces, the voice recordings. Karen's hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold the phone. That's evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, Diane said. You signed a contract to impersonate someone. You helped Linda Bennett frame an innocent woman for stalking. That's a felony, Karen. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. But I didn't know she said it was for a movie. A movie that paid $25,000 and required total secrecy. Come on, Karen. You knew this wasn't legitimate. Karen was crying now. I was desperate. I'm bankrupt. I lost everything. Linda offered me a way out. And did Linda tell you her real plan? I asked quietly. Did she tell you she's going to murder my ex-husband? Karen's head snapped up. What? Diane showed her the final photograph. The notebook with the timeline. The redacted section revealed under UV light. Stage construction accident. JB dies. Karen read it once. Twice. Then she dropped the phone like it burned her. Oh my God. Oh my God. She looked at me, eyes wild. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Linda said this was just about making your ex-husband think you were harassing him. She said after the lawsuit he'd drop it, and she just wanted to scare you into leaving them alone. But it's not about scaring me, I said. It's about isolating Jackson, making him completely dependent on Linda, and then killing him and taking his money. Karen was shaking her head over and over. I can't be part of a murder. You already are, Diane said bluntly. You're an accomplice, unless you help us stop Linda. How, Dee? You wear a wire. You meet with Linda and get her to confess on tape. And in exchange, we get you a plea deal. Immunity if possible, or at worst, a reduced charge with probation instead of prison time. Karen looked between us, tears streaming down her face. She'll kill me if she finds out I talked to you. Then we make sure she doesn't find out until it's too late, Diane said. You're meeting her tomorrow, aren't you? To pick up your final payment? Karen nodded miserably. She owes me $10,000. She said she'd pay me once the lawsuit was filed. Perfect. You meet her as planned. But you'll have a wire hidden under your clothes. All you have to do is get her talking about the plan. Get her to confirm she hired you. Get her to mention Jackson. The police will handle the rest." Karen wiped her eyes. "And if I do this, I won't go to prison." "Our lawyer is already negotiating with the Crown Attorney," Diane said. "Your cooperation will be the key to convicting Linda for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. That's worth a lot." Karen looked at me. Really looked at me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I needed the money so badly." Part of me wanted to rage at her. This woman had stolen my face, my identity had nearly destroyed my life. But looking at her now, broke desperate, manipulated by someone far more dangerous, I felt something closer to pity. "Help us stop Linda," I said. "That's how you make this right." Karen took a shaky breath. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll wear the wire." 24 hours later, we sat in an unmarked police van 2 blocks from the Tim Hortons where Karen was meeting Linda. Detective Rodriguez from Ottawa Police sat at the monitoring equipment, headphones on. Diane was beside him. I'd insisted on being there despite everyone's objections. Sarah Mitchell sat next to me reviewing the legal paperwork one more time. "The moment Linda incriminates herself, Rodriguez moves in," she said. "We'll have officers positioned at every exit." Through the camera feed, a tiny device hidden in Karen's purse, we could see Linda arrive. She looked so normal. Blonde hair, perfectly styled. Tasteful makeup. A pleasant smile as she hugged Karen. They ordered coffee. Made small talk about the weather. Then Linda pulled out an envelope. "Your final payment," she said, sliding it across the table. $10,000 as promised. You did good work, Karen." Karen's voice came through shaky but clear. "Thanks. It was an interesting job." "You had doubts at first," Linda said, stirring her coffee. "But I knew you'd come through. You're a professional." "Linda, I need to ask you something," Karen said. "This lawsuit against Aria Thompson. What happens after Jackson wins?" Linda smiled. "Jackson will get his restraining order. Aria will be legally barred from contacting him, and he'll finally feel safe. And that's it. That's the end of the plan." A pause. Linda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Why are you asking, Karen?" "I just want to make sure I'm not going to be involved in anything else. You know, legally. You did exactly what I paid you to do. Your part is finished." Linda leaned back. "Unless you're having second thoughts." Karen's hands were shaking. We could see it on this camera. "I saw something," Karen said. "At the storage unit, when I dropped off the costume last time I saw your notebook. The one with the timeline." Linda's expression froze. "You weren't supposed to see that." "I know, but I did. And Linda, there was something about an accident, about Jackson." The silence stretched. Linda's pleasant mask was slipping. "What exactly did you see, Karen?" "You wrote something about staging a construction accident, about Jackson dying." Karen's voice was barely above a whisper. "You're going to kill him, aren't you?" Linda stared at Karen for a long moment. Then she smiled again, but this time it was cold, predatory. "Kill is such an ugly word," Linda said softly. "I prefer restructure. Jackson has $3.2 million in assets, plus $800,000 in life insurance. After everything I've been through, I deserve that money more than some ungrateful children." "Oh my God," Detective Rodriguez breathed. "She just confessed." "But the restraining order," Karen said. "Why frame Aria?" "Because Aria is the backup beneficiary on that insurance policy. If anything happens to Jackson, and if his daughter can't inherit the money, goes to Aria. The restraining order eliminates her as a suspect. Who would believe a woman with a legal stalking complaint and a history of harassment would suddenly have nothing to do with her ex-husband's accidental death?" Linda took a sip of coffee, completely calm. "You're very clever, Karen, but you see now why you need to forget everything you saw in that notebook. You take your $25,000 and you disappear. Move back to Vancouver. Change your name. Forget this ever happened." "And if I don't?" Karen asked. Linda's smile turned icy. "Then you'll have an accident too. Nothing personal. Just business." Detective Rodriguez pulled off his headphones. "That's enough. Move in." Through the camera feed, we saw officers enter the Tim Hortons from 3 different directions. Linda looked up confused. Then she saw the uniforms and her face went pale. "Linda Bennett, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." Linda stood trying to run, but an officer caught her arm. "Get your hands off me, I haven't done anything." We have you on tape, Ms. Bennett. You just confessed to planning Jackson Barrett's murder. Karen slumped in her chair, crying. An officer gently helped her up, removing the wire from under her sweater. Linda's eyes found Karen across the restaurant. You wore a wire. You betrayed me. You were going to kill someone, Karen screamed. I'm not a murderer. Linda lunged at her, but officers pulled her back, cuffing her hands behind her back. As they led her out, Linda caught sight of the police van. Her eyes met mine through the tinted window. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely. There was nothing behind those eyes but cold calculation. Then she was gone, loaded into a police cruiser. Detective Rodriguez turned to me. Mrs. Thompson, we're going to need your full statement, but I want you to know you and your team just stopped a murder. Jackson Barrett owes you his life. I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. We'd done it. Linda Bennett was in custody. Karen was cooperating. The evidence was solid, and Jackson was safe. Emily hugged me tight. It's over, Mom. It's finally over. But I knew it wasn't. Not yet. There was still a trial ahead. Still questions to answer. Still a relationship with Jackson that needed mending. The hardest part was just beginning. Detective Rodriguez called me at 7 the next morning. Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come to the station. Jackson Barrett is here. He's asking to see you. My hands started shaking. Did you tell him everything? We showed him the evidence. The storage unit photos, the recording of Linda's confession, Karen's testimony. Rodriguez paused. He's devastated, and he wants to apologize. Emily drove me to the Ottawa police station. My daughter kept glancing at me, worry etched on her face. Mom, you don't have to do this today. You can wait. No. I gripped my cane tighter. He needs to know. And I need to see his face when he realizes what almost happened. They led us to a small conference room. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, a table with 4 chairs. Jackson was already there. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His hair was disheveled, eyes red-rimmed. He stood when I entered, then seemed to collapse back into his chair. Arya, his voice cracked. Oh God, Arya. I sat down slowly, my leg throbbing. Emily stayed by the door, giving us space, but staying close enough to intervene if needed. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. This man I'd spent 28 years of my life with, the father of my child, the person I'd once loved more than anyone. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Tell me what happened, I said quietly. From the beginning. Jackson rubbed his face with both hands. I met Linda at the gym in January. She was exactly what I needed. Or so I thought. She listened. She understood what it was like to lose everything and rebuild. She made me feel like I wasn't alone anymore. His voice caught. Then in March she told me she'd seen someone watching my office, a woman with short auburn hair, my height, wearing clothes like you used to wear. I stayed silent, letting him continue. She showed me photos. She played me voicemails. God, they sounded just like you. You saying you couldn't let me go, that Linda didn't deserve me, that you were watching, always watching. Jackson's hands were shaking now. I believed her. She showed me letters in your handwriting. She told me you'd followed her to Muskoka, that you'd called her in the middle of the night threatening her. And you never once thought to verify it with me. My voice was sharper than I intended. You never thought to call me and ask if I was actually stalking you. I wanted to, Jackson said miserably. But Linda said that's what stalkers want, engagement. That if I contacted you, it would only encourage you. She said I needed to document everything and take legal action. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Arya, I knew you were in the hospital. Emily told me about the accident. I sent flowers, but Linda convinced me you'd hired someone to do it for you. She said you were so obsessed that you'd pay someone to stalk me while you recovered. And you believe that? Emily's voice cut through from the doorway. Dad, you've known Mom for over 30 years. You really thought she'd do something like that. Jackson turned to his daughter. Linda was very convincing. She knew things about our marriage. Details only someone close to us would know. She used those details to make everything seem real. What details? I asked. She knew we'd been married 28 years. She knew about the bankruptcy, about how it destroyed our relationship. She knew you blamed me for losing the business. She used all of that to paint a picture of a woman who couldn't move on. My stomach churned. I never blamed you for the bankruptcy, Jackson. I blamed the circumstances. There's a difference. I know that now, but Linda twisted everything. She made me paranoid. Made me think everyone was against me except her. Detective Rodriguez entered with a file folder. Mr. Barrett, I want to show you something else. He laid out documents on the table, bank statements, legal records. Linda Bennett or Linda Marshall, her real name, has done this before, 3 times that we know of. She targets vulnerable men who've recently lost spouses or gone through divorces. She gains their trust, then isolates them from family and friends. Finally, she takes their money. Rodriguez pointed to one document. Gerald Price, Vancouver, 2016. Lost $180,000 to Linda. Patricia Dunn, Ottawa, 2018. Lost $65,000. Both victims were too ashamed to press charges. Jackson's face had gone white. She was going to take my money. She was going to take your life, I said quietly. Detective, show him the notebook. Rodriguez pulled out a photograph of Linda's timeline. The part about staging a construction accident. About Jackson's death. Jackson read it once, twice. Then he stood abruptly and stumbled to the corner of the room, retching into the wastebasket. Emily rushed to him, rubbing his back as he heaved. Dad, it's okay. You're safe now. When Jackson finally straightened, his face was ashen. She was going to kill me. Yes, Rodriguez said. We believe Linda planned to stage an accident at one of your construction sites within the next few weeks. Make it look like faulty equipment or a workplace incident. With the restraining order against Aria in place, there would be no suspicion on Linda. She'd inherit your life insurance and assets as your grieving girlfriend. Jackson sank back into his chair, staring at nothing. I almost died because I was lonely. Because I wanted someone to love me. No. I reached across the table, stopping just short of touching his hand. You almost died because a predator targeted you. This isn't your fault, Jackson. Linda's a professional manipulator. She's been doing this for years. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. While I was suing you for stalking, you were in a hospital bed recovering from an accident that almost killed you. And I didn't even check. I didn't visit. I just believed the worst of you. You sent flowers, I said softly. Yellow roses, your favorite. But I should have visited. I should have seen you, talked to you, verified anything before filing that lawsuit. His voice broke. Aria, I almost put you in jail for a crime you didn't commit. And all the while the woman I trusted was planning to murder me. Emily sat down beside her father. Dad, Mom fought for you. Even after you sued her. Even after everything. She hired lawyers and investigators. She spent her savings proving her innocence because she knew something was wrong. And when we discovered Linda's murder plot, she didn't hesitate to save you. Jackson looked at me with something like wonder. Why, after everything I did to you, why would you save me? I thought about my answer carefully. Because despite everything, the divorce, the bankruptcy, the pain, you're still Emily's father. You're still the man I spent nearly 3 decades with. And because letting you die when I could prevent it isn't who I am. I paused. I don't love you anymore, Jackson. Not the way I used to. But I don't hate you either. And I certainly don't want you dead. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. I'm withdrawing the lawsuit. Immediately. And I'm paying all your legal fees. Every cent. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. Aria, you spent $45,000 defending yourself from false charges I brought against you. That's on me. That's my debt to pay. Detective Rodriguez cleared his throat. There's one more thing we need to discuss. Linda Bennett's bail hearing is this afternoon. The Crown is opposing bail due to flight risk and danger to the public. We'd like both of you to testify about the threats she posed. I'll be there, Jackson said immediately. I nodded. So will I. The courthouse was packed. Linda Bennett sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit flanked by her lawyer. She looked smaller somehow, less polished. But when her eyes found mine across the courtroom, they were still cold, calculating. The Crown attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Walsh, stood to present her case. Your Honor, the defendant, Linda Marshall, also known as Linda Bennett, is charged with conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, identity theft, and criminal harassment. We oppose bail on 3 grounds: flight risk, danger to the public, and likelihood to reoffend. Catherine laid out the evidence methodically. Linda's history with Gerald Price and Patricia Dunn, the storage unit contents, Karen Westbrook's testimony, the recording of Linda admitting her plan to kill Jackson. "This is not a first-time offender making a mistake," Catherine said. "This is a serial predator who has refined her methods over years. She studies her victims, she isolates them, and now she's escalated to planning murder." Linda's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Richard Foster, stood to object. "Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. The so-called confession was taken out of context. Ms. Bennett was speaking hypothetically, not admitting to an actual plan." "Hypothetically," Catherine pulled out a transcript. "Let me read Ms. Bennett's exact words. Jackson has $3.2 million in assets, plus $800,000 in life insurance. After everything I've been through, I deserve that money more than some ungrateful children." She continued reading. "The restraining order eliminates Aria as a suspect. Who would believe a woman with a legal stalking complaint would suddenly have nothing to do with her ex-husband's accidental death?" Catherine looked at the judge. "Those are not hypothetical statements, Your Honor. That's a detailed murder plot." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Justice Patricia Morrison, turned to Linda. "Ms. Bennett, do you have anything to say?" Linda stood her lawyer, trying to pull her back down. "I never hurt anyone," Linda said, her voice trembling. "I loved Jackson. I was trying to protect him from his unstable ex-wife. That recording was manipulated. I was set up." "By whom?" Justice Morrison asked. "By her." Linda pointed at me. "Aria Thompson has been obsessed with Jackson for years. She couldn't stand seeing him happy with me. So she created this elaborate scheme to frame me." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Ms. Bennett, Mrs. Thompson has medical records proving she was hospitalized during the time you claim she was stalking Mr. Barrett. Hospital security footage, nursing logs, cell tower data, all confirming she was physically incapable of the actions you attributed to her." "Then she hired someone," Linda insisted. "She paid Karen Westbrook to impersonate her, and—" "Ms. Bennett," the judge interrupted. "We have bank records showing you paid Karen Westbrook $25,000. We have a contract in your handwriting. We have a storage unit rented under your alias containing costume pieces matching Mrs. Thompson's appearance. The evidence is overwhelming." Linda's face flushed red. "This is a mistake. You're all making a terrible mistake." Justice Morrison's expression hardened. "I've reviewed the evidence. I've listened to the recording. And I've read about your prior victims, Mr. Price and Mrs. Dunn. Ms. Bennett, you are a danger to the community. Bail is denied. You will remain in custody until trial." The gavel fell. Linda screamed. "This isn't fair. I did nothing wrong." 2 officers escorted her out, still screaming. As she passed our row, she lunged toward Jackson. "I loved you. I would have made you happy. She poisoned you against me." Officers pulled her back. Her voice echoed down the hallway even after the doors closed. Jackson was shaking. Emily held his hand. "It's over, Dad. She can't hurt you now." But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The trial was still ahead. 3 months later, I sat in the Ottawa courthouse for Linda Bennett's trial. The courtroom was packed. Journalists. Curious onlookers. Gerald Price had flown in from Vancouver. Patricia Dunn sat in the front row, her hands clasped tight. And Jackson sat beside me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel his presence. We'd spent these 3 months slowly rebuilding something. Not our marriage that was gone forever, but a friendship, a mutual respect, co-parents who could be in the same room without tension. It was enough. Karen took the stand wearing a simple black dress. She looked older than 58, worn down by guilt and fear. Catherine Walsh, the prosecutor, approached gently. "Ms. Westbrook, please tell the court how you met Linda Bennett." Karen's voice was steady, rehearsed. "I answered a Craigslist ad in December 2023. It offered $25,000 for an acting job. I was bankrupt, desperate. I responded." "What did the job entail?" "Linda told me she needed someone to impersonate her boyfriend's ex-wife. She said it was for an independent film about stalking. Very discreet, very professional. She showed me photos of Aria Thompson and said I needed to match her appearance." Catherine showed the jury photographs of Karen in costume, the auburn wig, the Ray-Ban glasses, the navy windbreaker. "Did you question the legitimacy of this job?" Karen's eyes filled with tears. I should have. But $25,000. It was more money than I'd seen in years. Linda said everything was legal, that Aria had signed releases, that this was all above board. When did you realize it wasn't? When private investigators showed me Linda's notebook, the one with the murder plot. Karen looked at Jackson. I'm so sorry, Mr. Barrett. I never meant to help someone hurt you. Linda's lawyer, Richard Foster, cross-examined. Ms. Westbrook, you admit you were paid $25,000 to impersonate Mrs. Thompson. Yes. And you never verified that Mrs. Thompson had consented to this. Linda said she had. But you never checked. You never contacted Mrs. Thompson. You just took the money and did what you were told. Karen's voice hardened. I did what Linda paid me to do. But when I learned she was planning murder, I went to the police. I cooperated fully. After you'd already committed fraud, Foster pressed. Yes, and I'll have to live with that. But at least I stopped a murder. Watching Jackson on the stand was painful. He recounted how Linda had entered his life, how she'd gained his trust, how she'd slowly poisoned him against me with fabricated evidence. She was everything I thought I needed, Jackson said, his voice hollow. Someone who understood my pain, who made me feel like I wasn't a failure. But it was all manipulation, every word, every gesture. She studied me like a textbook and gave me exactly what I wanted to hear. Catherine showed him the photographs of Aria stalking him. Did you believe these were actually your ex-wife? I did. The resemblance was uncanny, and Linda was so convincing. She'd say things like, I saw her again today. She was wearing that blue jacket she always loved. She looked at me with such hatred. Little details that made it feel real. Mr. Barrett, when did you learn the truth? Jackson's voice cracked. When Detective Rodriguez showed me the recording, Linda admitting she planned to kill me, to stage an accident and take my insurance money. I couldn't breathe. This woman I trusted. This woman I thought loved me. She was planning my murder. Several jurors looked visibly shaken. Foster's cross-examination was brief. He couldn't shake Jackson's testimony. It was too raw, too honest. I took the stand with my cane, my leg still not fully healed. Catherine guided me through my story. The accident, the hospital stay, the lawsuit, the investigation. Mrs. Thompson, how did you feel when you received papers accusing you of stalking your ex-husband? I looked at the jury. Shocked, then terrified. I was in a wheelchair, barely able to walk, and someone was claiming I'd been all over Ontario following Jackson, threatening his girlfriend. It was surreal, like being trapped in a nightmare where you're accused of something impossible. What sustained you through this ordeal? My daughter Emily, my lawyer Sarah, my investigator Diane, and the truth. I knew I hadn't done these things. I had proof. I just had to make people see it. Catherine showed the jury my medical records, the nursing logs documenting my every movement, the security footage. On March 15th, when Linda claims you were in Ottawa stalking Mr. Barrett, where were you? In physical therapy at St. Michael's Hospital. The nursing notes show I managed 8 steps with a walker before the pain was too severe to continue. Could you have traveled to Ottawa that day? I could barely get to the bathroom. Ottawa was impossible. The jury nodded. The evidence was overwhelming. Foster's cross-examination tried to plant doubt. Mrs. Thompson, you and Mr. Barrett had a contentious divorce. We had a difficult divorce, but we remained civil. You blamed him for the bankruptcy that destroyed your marriage. I blamed the circumstances, not Jackson personally, Foster pressed. But you must have been angry, bitter. You lost your home, your lifestyle. Mr. Foster, I interrupted. I lost a lot in that bankruptcy, but I never once stalked my ex-husband. I never threatened anyone, and I certainly never deserved to be framed for crimes I didn't commit by a woman planning to murder him. The courtroom was silent. Linda took the stand in a modest dress, her blonde hair pulled back. She looked demure, harmless, but her testimony was chilling. Foster asked her to explain the recording. I was speaking hypothetically, Linda said smoothly. Karen Westbrook had been asking me uncomfortable questions about my relationship with Jackson. She seemed jealous, unstable. I made those comments to see if she was trustworthy. Obviously she wasn't. So you never intended to harm Mr. Barrett? Never. I loved Jackson. I still do. Catherine's cross-examination was devastating. Ms. Bennett, you told Karen Westbrook that you deserved Jackson's $3.2 million more than his ungrateful children. That's what you said. On tape. I was speaking hypothetically. You also said, and I quote, "The restraining order eliminates Arya as a suspect." Ms. Bennett, how does one eliminate a suspect in a hypothetical scenario? Linda hesitated. I was just making conversation. Making conversation about framing someone for murder. I never said murder. Catherine pulled out the UV light photograph of the notebook. Stage construction accident. JB dies. Inheritance. Those are your words, Ms. Bennett, written in your handwriting, in your personal notebook stored in a unit rented under your alias. Linda's composure cracked. That was just... I was upset. Venting. I never would have actually what killed him, Ms. Bennett, you hired Karen Westbrook for $25,000. You created an elaborate scheme to frame Arya Thompson. You isolated Jackson Barrett from his family. You positioned yourself to inherit his estate. And you detailed a plan to kill him in your notebook. That's not venting. That's premeditation. Linda's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the real Linda. Cold, calculating, dangerous. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Linda's face went white. On the charge of fraud, guilty. Her hands were shaking. On the charge of identity theft, guilty. She looked at Jackson one last time. He looked away. On the charge of criminal harassment, guilty. Linda collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Her lawyer tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. Justice Morrison looked down at Linda with contempt. Ms. Bennett, you are a dangerous predator. You targeted vulnerable people, gained their trust, and exploited them for financial gain. You escalated from theft to attempted murder. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no conscience. Linda tried to speak, but the judge silenced her. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 12 years. You will also pay restitution to your victims, $90,000 to Gerald Price, $65,000 to Patricia Dunn, and $45,000 to Arya Thompson for legal fees. The gavel fell. Linda was led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my new apartment. Jackson had paid my legal fees as promised, plus an additional $50,000 in compensation. I'd used part of it to move to a better place, still modest, but with a view of the lake and room for Emily to visit. The rest I'd put toward starting a nonprofit Truth Prevails Foundation. We helped people who'd been falsely accused, providing legal resources and emotional support. Jackson and I met once a month for coffee. We talked about Emily, about his business, about life. We'd never be married again. That door was closed. But we'd found something better: mutual respect, friendship, co-parents who genuinely cared about each other's well-being. Thank you, he said one afternoon as we sat by the lake, for saving my life, for not giving up when you had every reason to. Thank you for coming back, I said, for admitting you were wrong, for making it right. Emily had finished her book, Phantom Wife: A True Story of Manipulation and Survival. It was published last month and already climbing the bestseller lists. Karen Westbrook served 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. She sent me a letter every month apologizing, updating me on her progress. I'd written back twice saying I forgave her. And Linda and she was in Grand Valley Institution for Women, where she'd spend the next 12 years at minimum. As I sat on my balcony that evening watching the sunset over Lake Ontario, I thought about the journey. From that moment when the lawsuit papers arrived to this moment of peace. The fear, the investigation, the trial, the vindication. And I thought about the lesson I'd carry forward. The truth has weight that lies can never match. Technology can be weaponized against you. Your phone spoofed photos, doctored your identity, stolen. But that same technology creates records, digital trails, cell tower pings, evidence that doesn't lie. When someone tries to destroy you, document everything. Believe in your innocence. Fight like hell. And never ever give up on the truth. Because in the end, the truth always prevails.